Shit, some people got it, and other people don't. Let's get into it. All right, man. Welcome back. We back in the studio. You know what I'm saying? Back to our original scene. I had some time. Today, I was teaching a class. Man, today was the first day. Teaching class about engineering, recording, mixing, mastering. People have been asking me to do this class for years and years, saying expressing interest. And I finally decided to throw together a curriculum. And I was just thinking about all the things that I had learned, all the stuff that I had seen over the years, all the techniques that I developed myself or whatever. And I decided to write that stuff out into a little curriculum plan. And I started today. Today was my first day. I only had one student, a couple of no-shows. I had one person that was out of town and they don't intend to be in class until next week. It's a 3-week course. But yeah, man, I did it. I threw it together real fast and I did it real abruptly because I was explaining to my client. It came up kind of fast because I wanted to just stop procrastinating and get it done. I've been flirting with this idea for years, but I was always too afraid to start it. So this was my way of just saying, let's get it. Let's go right now. Let's get this class going because if I keep waiting or waiting for the perfect time or trying to get everything perfect, I'll be doing this forever, man. So I didn't want to do that anymore. Threw the curriculum together, forced myself into it, threw myself into the fire. Today was the first day, like I said, and it was interesting. What I learned today is that teaching is an art in itself, and it is not easy. So, just like anything else, when you're face to face with something that you're not familiar with doing, you kind of gain an appreciation for it, right? Because you start to see the ins and outs of it and what goes into being good at it. And teaching is a whole other layer. I've always said my whole life that I think I would be good at teaching. And my student actually told me that, he was like, you're a natural at it because he went to college for years to become a dentist. So I take his words, heavily because, he's been in that college environment for a long time. He was like, yeah, man, you're doing good. So I was like, okay, bet. I was explaining to him, like, this is really just like a crash course of me just trying to learn how to go about this. And he's kind of my guinea pig. And he was like, hey, I have no problem with that. So, you know, I'm going to fine tune the way that I teach the course over time as I get better at it and I get more familiar with the curriculum itself. But I think I did pretty good. Of course I'll get better over time, but, this is episode 35 of Streams, man. I was wrapping up. I did my class today. I had a session with a young lady that I had never worked with before, just about an hour ago, about 30 minutes ago. We recorded a song and she got up out of here. And I was sitting here like, I could go home and just sit around, or I could just put this time to use and be productive. So I decided to do an episode. Um, so yeah, man, let's get into it. I was going through my list of topics, and the topic that kind of jumped out at me today was something that I had written down after seeing this post. The post was about Nas. And no, I'm wrong. The post was actually about Joey Badass. Joey Badass had put out his album, I believe it was 1999. Let's look it up. Let's go to Joey Badass's page. And let's look it up. So I'm at Joey Badass's page and we're looking at all of his albums. Yep. It says Joey Badass put out 1999 and 2012. And I believe at that time, 2012, Joey Badass, because I think he's about my age, a little younger than me. Yep, he's 7 years younger than me, about 6 years younger than me. He put out his album in 2012, and he was born in '95, so that makes him 17. Yeah, man. That was the post. The post that I saw, I was scrolling on Instagram, and it was like a hip hop blog or something, and they were talking about Joey Badass putting out an absolute classic at the, ripe young age of, 17 or 16 or whatever, whatever age he was. If I'm doing the math correctly, I think it's 17. And I'm not sure if I've heard that album. I think I heard the one that came after it. That was how I was introduced to him, which I think was um what was the name of that album? Oh, so I was introduced to him for at Badass, which was 2015. That I had bought that album, actually the physical copy of that album, and I knew who he was prior to that, but that was like my introduction to him. I went and bought it after I heard something, and I was riding around with it for about a few months. I remember it wasn't a very long rotation in my car, but I think I had his album in the car for like 3 months, 2 months, something like that. Um, and upon seeing his post, like I said, I'm not familiar with 1999, his first album, but I had heard of it before. But I didn't know that he was only 17 when he put it out. But this post was basically speaking to how he was that young, putting out such a good body of work. That instantly led me to thinking about Nas. I believe Nas was 16, 17, or 18 years old when he put out Illmatic, which is regarded, widely regarded as um, one of the best, if not the best, hip hop album of all time. And it's usually up there against like Me Against the World or something like that. You know, there's, reasonable doubt. There's an argument for a few albums that's up there in that echelon of saying it's the greatest hip hop album of all time. I believe Rolling Stone just put out a list and they rated it was either that or Lauryn Hill or something that was number one on their list, which isn't, that means nothing. These publications they're not God. The people decide what's best. You know what I'm saying? But so I just want to let you know I'm not going off of that list as some sort of, comprehensive list of best hip hop albums. No. But I was just pointing out the fact that I believe even they ranked it number one or two or something like that. But that's beside the point. The point is a person being that young, putting out a body of work that is that good to where adults deem it the best body of work in a particular genre. For the last 30 years they've been talking about that being an arguable possibility. Like it might be the best. In my rankings of albums, my favorite album of all time is Dark and Hell is Hot by DMX. But Illmatic is definitely up there, right? Excuse me. Illmatic is up there on my list. It's one of my favorite albums, and there's a lot of reasons for it because it's more than just how good the songs are. A lot of it has to do with nostalgia or how it made me feel or what time in my life I was introduced to this music and why it's important to me. Everybody has their biases and why they decide something is the best, quote unquote, to them. But again, all of this is beside the point. I guess I just wanted to look into the concept of somebody so young being great. And truth be told, it's something that I can't really identify with. Now, I'm not going to downplay my accomplishments and the things that I was able to do at a young age. But one for one, comparing what these gentlemen were able to do when they were 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, it's amazing. And when I think about myself at that time, just my understanding of what good was, it wasn't it wasn't up there with these people, man. And I guess the question that I'm asking with this topic is how? How are some souls so good at what they do at such a young age? I remember being, when I got into music, I told this story a dozen times on this podcast now, but when I got into music, I was probably 13. And I remember being absolutely trash at it in the beginning. Naturally, as most people are when they first start something. They're usually bad because they don't know how to do it. That goes for anything from basketball to gymnastics to music to cutting hair. You're usually bad at it in the very beginning because you have to learn the ropes. Me, I was pretty bad at it. Um, Sorry, I was I just got distracted like a squirrel. Um, I remember going through the paces and learning the ropes. I remember being 19 doing music. Um, and I remember not having a full grasp of even life to be able to pour myself into my music in the way that I'm able to now. When I listen to Nas, when I listen to Illmatic, the way that he's retelling his perspective on Queens or Queensbridge projects in particular, it sounds like a poet, a savant. He sounds like a prophet. I'm not trying to glaze here, but if for anybody who studies hip hop in a complete wholesome way, and you go back and you listen to that album, whether you like it or not, turn the music off and read the lyrics to these songs. He's 19 years old. Let me see. Hey Siri,
Hi.
how old was Nas when he released Illmatic?
Nas was only 20 years old when he released his debut album Omatic in 1994. This
Tw-
answer is from hiphopts.com.
So 20 years old, releasing an album like that. When I was 20 years old, which was a long time ago, um, I was not able to put words together in that way. Shit, I'm still not able to put words together on that level. It's not easy because it takes a certain way of viewing life, a way of viewing things, an understanding of the English language, an understanding of how to string words together to convey an emotion or even a scene if you're trying to tell a story or whatever. And Nas is notoriously a great storyteller. That's one of his strong suits, right? Um, it takes a special individual to be able to put words together in the way that he did. Very similarly, if you listen to um, if you listen to Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, it's put together very well. It's very poetic. It's very prophetic from a younger guy living a life that is entwined with the streets. But even through that, which kind of relates back to a topic that I discussed a couple episodes ago, about people being able to rise above their circumstances and see things in a way that their counterparts or their peers cannot. You have these artists, these young dudes who come from these urban environments, Jay-Z being from Brooklyn, Marcy Projects, Nas being from Queensbridge. Um, the way that they retell their perspective from these places, coming from these environments, is fascinating to me. How they're able to see things in a poetic way or tell things in a prophetic way and talk about the ramifications of these things that we take part in as people from the hood. They talk about death. They talk about jealousy. They talk about killing. They talk about um, being on guard from your enemies. They talk about all of these concepts in a way that it seems like a person that age wouldn't be able to. But the difference between Nas and Jay-Z, albeit both of them brilliant, both albums brilliant in their forms, right? But the difference is that Jay-Z was 27, 26, something like that. Let's ask Siri. Hey, Siri,
Hi there.
how old was Jay-Z when he put out Reasonable Doubt?
Jay-Z was 26 when he released Reasonable Doubt. This is from Pitchfork.com.
Right. So 26 is much different. It's much different than 20, or 17 for Joey Badass. And, that's not to take anything away from Jay-Z, but it's just to say that they were in two different places in their lives when they both did their magnus opus or whatever the word is, where it's like their thesis, their introduction to the world. These are the albums that they were working on their whole lives. Jay-Z jumped off the porch a lot later with his first album, at least. Jay-Z was in the music industry for a while and had been rapping already, but his first offering as an album didn't come until 96. Yep, 96. I believe Illmatic came out in 93. And I believe they're 3 years, I think Nas is 3 years younger than Jay-Z. Um, Bruh, I remember being 20 years old. I was doing music at that time. Um, 20 years old was '08, bro. In '08, '09, I was producing. I wasn't rapping yet. I was rapping privately, but I wasn't rapping officially yet. I would write sometimes, and keep it all to myself, and I was terrible at it. I didn't see things I won't say that. I did see the things the way that I saw them now, but the problem is I was not as good with my verbiage. I wasn't as good with my vocabulary as I am now. I wasn't as good as conveying ideas with my words the way that I can now. Um, I'm in my 30s. I'm in my mid 30s, and I feel like I'm just now approaching being remotely close to the way that Nas was able to convey his ideas at 20 years old, and I'm 35. That says a lot about his ability with words. Um, I would write, and sometimes I would say something profound, but saying something profound sometimes is not the same as writing an entire album that's 8, 9 songs long of profound perspectives. And Nas, we know what type of artist Nas or is, and he's not very playful very often. Most of his songs are dead serious and they're very deep in nature and in tone. Um, a lot of his music is very dark. Um, I didn't, you know, I started making dark, quote unquote, music later in my life. Um, but even still, I wasn't able to execute quite the way that I am now with my words. If I was to look at myself and compare myself to a Jay-Z, Jay-Z was 26 when he put out Reasonable Doubt. It's a lot going on my phone right now. When I was 26, okay, I can understand that. Jay-Z was 26 putting out Reasonable Doubt, which is an amazing piece of work. Very, very good. When I put out my first album, I was about 25. No, 20, 26. I was about 26. If I compare those two albums, woo-wee. If I was to compare those two albums, let me be the first to say that it does not come anywhere close. My first album was Thoughts from Andromeda. I believe it came out 2015. It's not even on streaming, and it probably never will be because I want that to be buried deep, deep in the soil. The only people that have that album are people that know me personally, probably, or like people that listen to my music from way back when I put it out, which is going on 10 years now, which is insane. The only people that have that are probably relatives and friends that are really close to me. But I put that album out and it had some cool concepts on it. Don't get me wrong. Really nice concepts, but the execution wasn't quite there. I'm working on an album right now. And I have put out maybe 4 albums in the last few years. 4 or 5 albums in the last couple years, 2, 3 years. Um, the way that I'm able to execute and convey my ideas and thoughts now are light years beyond what I did in 2015 with Thoughts from Andromeda. It was an okay album. It was okay. I listened to it a couple years ago and I cringed the entire time because, like I said, I'm just light years beyond what I was capable of then. But even still, I cringed a lot because a lot of the ideas and the beliefs that I had back then, I don't even feel that way anymore. Those are not the ideas that I have today. I'm a totally different person. Ironically, I've heard Jay-Z express the same, you know, the same sort of, when he looks back on his body of work, I remember him mentioning, like, now that I have kids, something to the effect that now that he has kids, he doesn't necessarily agree with or feel the same way. And it's almost like an embarrassing, little, a little mark on his music now. Because as a father and as a man, he views his ideas differently. It wasn't necessarily that for me. It wasn't from like a moral place, but it was more so like I've evolved and I think totally different type of thing. Like I didn't make music, um, or I didn't think the way that I think. No, I mean, obviously it goes without saying. I would hope that you don't think the same exact way that you did when you were a child or a young man versus when you're a fully grown man. I would hope that your ideology changes. Um, but even still, the production that I chose and the production that I made, the way that I approach music, the way that I was, my ability with the English language and my vocabulary, totally different. Um, but even still, being 26, like Jay-Z was when he made his first album, I can see that I was getting close to being competent, being great, being good at what I do. Um, 26 years old is right before I started having my kids. And I tell everybody there's like two different sides of my life. There's pre-kids and then there's post-kids. Once I had my children, it was like my brain literally changed in like almost like physicality, like the way that my brain fires off, you know, neurons and electrons totally changed once I had children. The things that I have emotional responses to totally changed. I cry about things that I never would have cried about before I had kids. I'll see something and it'll be something about a parent and their child, whether it's positive or negative. It could be somebody losing a son, or it could be somebody just appreciating and loving their kids. And I'll see it and I'll like tear up a little bit because I'm just a different person now. The things that are important to me changed overnight once I had my children. My relationship with my parents changed overnight, specifically my father. The way that I relate to my father and understand my father changed overnight upon having children. The same can be said about the way that I make music. It changed overnight. Once I had my kids, my music changed overnight. The concepts that I would talk about, the things that were available to me to talk about and write about now in my music, it was a whole new bag that I could pull from. Raising a son and then having a second son, raising two black boys in Detroit took my mind to a totally different place. So when I would sit down to write a song, my heart and my mind would instantly go to these places, thinking about the world from the perspective of a father, thinking about a world from the perspective of my own children, the things that they would have to be faced with, the dangers that they would come across. These are things that I had no reason to think about before having kids. You know, and then you think about Jay-Z and Nas. I don't believe Nas had a child at 20. I don't know. I'm not sure. Let's ask to see if Siri knows. Hey Siri,
Hi there.
um, how old was Nas when he had his first child?
Here's what I found.
Um, okay. So Nas did not have his first daughter until the year after he put out Illmatic. So he was 21, I believe. Um, so these men were able to be this brilliant and this great. Even Joey Badass, released in 1999 in the year 2012, um, he was able to put out such a great body of work as a 17-year-old. And I don't believe Joey Badass had a kid then, and I still don't think he has a kid now. So I needed something like fatherhood to come into my life to sort of flip the switch. But it wasn't just that. It was probably maturity and being able to view the world in a different way as a man that was approaching 30 years old at the time when I had my kids. That also contributed to me being better with words and just time and experience in life. But the fascinating thing is that these gentlemen were still young. They were kids, 20 years old, 17 years old, and Jay-Z being 26. I don't give a fuck what nobody say. When you're 26, you're a young man. You're not a little boy. You're a young man. You could be held accountable for your actions. But now that I'm in my 30s, well into my 30s, boy, 26 is young. It's young. And these men were prophetic enough to write in the way that they did before before children, you know, before living, you know, longer stretches of life like I have. But here's my theory. These young men grew up in a time that is much different than now, where you probably did have to grow up faster. And they grew up in environments. They come from neighborhoods where you absolutely had to grow up faster. I've been to Queensbridge projects. I sat there. I went there sat on the project benches in the middle of the buildings and looked around and took pictures and kind of tried to soak it in. I was walking around. I'm not going to say I saw people that scared me or nothing. It wasn't like that. I'm sure there's a lot of bad elements going on in the projects because, whoa, like what a surprise. But I didn't necessarily see anything like that. It wasn't about that. I went to Queensbridge and I was walking amongst the people. I was there. There was a guy outside barbecuing. There's people outside talking. They were sitting in their cars and, people living their lives. And I was there. It was kind of quiet because it was during COVID. I don't know if that was why, but it was definitely quiet. Um, but I saw people walking around and I saw the condition that this environment was in. Plus, I've heard the stories from Prodigy and Nas and all of these other rappers that are rapped about Queensbridge throughout the years. Um, so I know a little bit about that place, beside the fact that I've been there. But I know about it because I listen to these artists, whether it's Cormega or Prodigy or um whatever other artists come from. You got Noriega coming from Left Rack and Queensbridge. So I've listened to these different accounts and tellings of this place. And based on what they've been talking about for the last 35 years, of talking about Queensbridge and even artists that predate them, um, it's not a nice place. And it's a place that's dangerous. It's a place that doesn't seem to have a lot of opportunity. It's a place that has a lot of bad elements mixed into it. And you would imagine a person coming from that place having to fend for themselves. You're forced to kind of grow up on your own, bro. You're growing up on your own. Um, and unless you get a grasp of life and become an adult real fast, you'll probably fall by the wayside or fall victim to these things that are waiting you, these traps, these pitfalls that are waiting you. So then if you take a person that comes from Queensbridge Projects his whole life, I think, Nas, I'm talking about, um, he's thrust into adulthood and having to grow up, mixed with the fact that he was well read. Based on my knowledge of him as an artist, he was well read. He was a different type of cat that kind of saw things differently. While he was a street nigga, he also would read or, look into philosophers or listen to jazz music and stuff like that. So it might have opened his mind up in a way that, you know, other people just aren't privy to until they're either older or never. You know what I mean? And I believe Nas is one of those special people. Tupac was another one. Tupac, which, also comes from New York, but he claims Oakland or he claims, Marin City or whatever. Tupac was born in New York or lived in New York very early on in his life. When we talk about the Tupac and Biggie story, it's almost as if we fail to remember that these were kids. Tupac released Tupacalypse Now, I believe, in 91. Where's my phone? Hey Siri,
Uh huh.
what year did Tupac release his first album?
Tupac released his first album Tupacalypse Now in 1991. This answer is from Wikipedia.
1991. Hey Siri,
Mm-hmm.
what year was Tupac born?
Tupac Shakur was born June 16th, 1971.
Again, 20 years old.
Tupac Shakur was born June 16th, 1971.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to have her repeat that. I never seen that before. I said again and she repeated it. Man, this is the future, bro. But anyway, so Tupac released his first album in 1991. Um, he was 20 years old, probably, I don't know what month he released it. So he was either 19 or 20 years old in 1991. Um, that's young, man. But even still, we look at his life, we've seen Tupac's life in particular pretty much at all stages of his life. Somehow his life was very well documented. And it was almost as if his mother or his family knew that he was special or something. Because I've never seen any artist from his era have their lives documented so well, right? But we've seen him at all stages of his life. He was pretty young and he was speaking very brilliantly very early on. He was very strong in his stances, kind of opinionated. He was fearless in a way because the way he talked, even when he was sort of like a feminine young boy, he was very outspoken. He was very brilliant with his words. He was very intelligent. He was very brave. What's up? He's at his mom's house. Yeah, he's gone. He'll be back Tuesday. Yeah, I'll be finishing up my class at 1 o'clock. At 1, yeah. I think. Because it could go over, yeah. What's up, Tyler? What's up, man? You all right? I'm actually recording a podcast right now. He's with his mom. Yep. I'll have him see y'all when he come back. All right. See y'all tomorrow. All right. All right, bye. All right. Sorry, talking to my nephews and my sister. But anyway, Tupac was a very advanced person for his age, is what I'm talking about. And I never really understood why some people would be so advanced at such an early age. And it could be because they were forced into it. Or it could also be because some people are just special and their brains develop in a way that, they understand the world around them in a way that other people just can't. And that's my theory, which is what, like I said, I was talking about that a few episodes ago. But looking at the way Tupac was up until he released his first album, because we even heard from him rapping wise before Tupacalypse Now even came out, because he was rapping with, Digital Underground. And he was really, really good with words very early on. I can't relate, man. I don't get it. And we talk about Biggie and Tupac, like they weren't children. And we kind of forget that they were really young, putting out profound bodies of work. Like Tupac has been studied in college. He was a kid when he died. He was 24, 25 years old when he died. And his body of work has been studied thereafter, up until today. And he was a kid. 24, 25 is young as shit. But, Tupacalypse Now is being studied, and he was 20 years old. Illmatic is being studied till this day. And he was 20 years old. These were kids that affected the world in such a way. That's a special thing. And it's understated how important these people are. One more thing before I go. I just want to see something. Hey, Siri. How old was Kendrick Lamar when he put out Good Kid, Mad City?
Kendrick Lamar was 25 when he released Good Kid.
Yeah, and Kendrick is like um 30, 37 now. Yeah, so yeah, 25 years old, man. Young. And to me, that's one of the most important albums that we've ever heard. Good Kid, Mad City. Look, man, I'm done ranting, but I just wanted to point that out. Like, these are children putting out bodies of work that are effectively changing people's lives and affecting the world. They're introducing conversations into the atmosphere. They're giving perspectives that maybe hadn't been considered, and they're children when they're doing it. That's impressive to say the least. Um, like I said, I'm working on music now, and I can only hope to impact a person the way that they did. Of course, I'm not on the scale, I'm not on the platform that they were. But people do listen to my music, and I can only hope that I affect these people's lives in the way that they did. But yeah, man, I'm gonna wrap it up. I got my point across. I appreciate you for listening. Hit the like, hit the subscribe if you're so inclined to do so. I appreciate everybody subscribing. I did gain some subscribers. I'm so happy to be back. This is a great avenue for me to get some thoughts and some steam off of my heart and mind. I love doing this, man. I don't ever want to stop again as long as this is serving me the way that it is. I appreciate my audience, man. I really do. I love the fact that y'all tap in religiously to listen to me. Religiously is the wrong word to use. This is not a cult. I'm not building a cult. But I like the people that tap in regularly to hear what I have to say, man, because I'm just a regular person just like you. But yeah, this is Streams, man. Thank you for tapping in. I'll see you next week.